The tax planning industry is getting neutered, and if you don't realize it, you're either A, too dumb to know what's going on, or B, drinking the Kool-Aid. And to put it into perspective for you, let me lay the land of exactly what is going on. First, there's more competition than ever. TaxPlan IQ just signed a deal with Liberty Tax to get their software in all 1,200 of Liberty Tax's locations. So the old adage of, oh, prep is different from planning is not valid any longer. Not to mention H&R Block, if you go over to their website right now, on their website, and with Liberty Tax too, it says that they offer year-round advisory. So tax planning is becoming commoditized, and if you know anything about the law of supply and demand, when supply goes up and demand stays the same or even falls, what ends up happening is that exact same thing drops in value. So if you're having a hard time hopping on calls with people, being able to justify your value, or they're price shopping you against all of your colleagues, just know that the tax planning softwares that were once building this industry are absolutely neutering it by causing more competitors than ever. Not to mention, Corvée also spun up their own tax firm and is going direct to consumer, offering free AI tax plans, okay? Now, they're not just a software for tax planners anymore. They are going direct to consumers. That means that you now have to compete against thousands of other tax planners who are advertising online, and you have to compete against the exact same tax planning software that told you for the past 10 years, oh yeah, go and charge $10,000 plus, is now going straight to the clients and saying, oh, hey, by the way, you can get a tax plan for free. So you're getting neutered on both sides from the AI perspective because they're going and undercutting the entire market. And on top of that, there's more competitors than ever because the only way Tax Plan IQ can grow and places like Certified Tax Coach can grow is for them to get more people using their software and certification, which is not advancing the industry. What it's doing is creating more competitors for you. So with this all going on, how can you keep your prices high? Well, if you're like most people, okay, you fall into one of three areas of this pyramid. The very bottom of the pyramid is what I call the service provider. These are the people who offer tax plan. They have it on their website, but past that, there's nothing really that they offer, right? So they offer the service. The next one is the expert or the thought leader. Now, these people post content online or they publish books, and what they do is they showcase their expertise, okay, or things like their credentials. A lot of these people think that if they just get more credentials, that's what's gonna make them more money. But there's one thing that is left out of the expert or thought leader, and that is influence. And if you don't have influence, you'll never be able to get prospects to take the next step. And what the top has that the expert and the service provider don't, okay? Expert has a little bit more visibility because they are posting online, but the authority, and more specifically, the go-to authority, has influence. Not only do they have expertise and they offer the product or service, but they have influence. So with that being said, I'm gonna take you guys through my 3 P's of positioning. How do you position yourself as the go-to expert to your dream clients so you can stop competing on price and start having clients line up to work with you as the go-to authority? And as you can tell, I like my triangles. I use a triangle over here. We're going to use another one. Well, this is technically a pyramid. This is a pyramid, but this is a triangle, okay? And the first one is the pond that you choose to go after. You see, at the end of the day, it's much, much easier and less costly to be a big fish in a small pond than it is to be a small or the same size fish, right, in the ocean. And in some of my previous videos, I've gone why it's important to niche down, okay? But even past the pond, right? Sometimes it's better to be the king of a puddle, right? It's easier to go after the smaller market, not necessarily in terms of revenue or like business size, but it's easier to go after a smaller surface area than it is to go after a larger one. Because when you go after that larger one, your ad budget gets diluted, so does your marketing message, okay? So the first one that is so important is to pick a small pond that you can absolutely dominate. And funny story actually, so I recently took my 3.5-year-old daughter to Disney. It was her first time going there. And we're walking down, if you've ever been there, you know, the parks they have multiple parks in the same Disney World, right? And so we were at the Hollywood Studios walking towards what's called the Tower of Terror, which is this super cool ride. It's like got ghosts and stuff in there, and so it's a scary ride. So I'm walking down there and I have my Mickey sweatshirt on that I had just got. And her mom's walking next to us. We're actually not together anymore, but we did go as co-parents. And so I'm walking down the street and this guy comes up and taps me on the shoulder. And I'm either thinking, A, what he's gonna do is he's gonna ask me for some directions, or B, he's gonna ask me where I got this sick sweater. Literally since I've gotten home, this is like the most complimented piece I have ever worn. And so he comes up to me, he taps me on the shoulder, and he goes, and this is a true story by the way, I'm not making any of this up. He goes, "Do you work with tax planners?" And I turn and I look at him, and I'm like so taken aback because I'm walking down the middle of Disney World that I just don't know what to say. But I actually recognize the guy because I get hit with a lot of tax planners ads. So I said, "Yeah, you're a tax planner, right?" And now think about the likelihood of this. I'm walking down Disney World where 100 million people per year visit the Disney parks. Okay? There's 82,000 public accounting firms in the United States. Only a subset of those are actual tax planners, who's the target market that I work with. And the fact that we're in the exact same park, not just Disney World, but that we're in the exact same park at the exact same time, and he recognizes me, okay, goes to show the power of personal branding and being the king of a small puddle as opposed to a small fish in the ocean. And just so you know, I felt like a complete Disney princess that day when he came up to me and asked if I worked with tax planners, and he recognized me in the middle of Disney World walking down the street. Safe to say it was a pretty surreal experience. So the first thing is to pick a small pond. Now, the next thing that you want to do, okay, is you want to identify the problem that you solve. So for us, what we do is we help tax planners become the go-to authority to their dream clients. But that's the solution, right? That's the benefit. That's the thing that they want. Okay? The pain that they want to get out of is they want to stop being a commodity, right? They want to stop blending in as a service provider, being looked at as a service provider, okay? They want to be the authority in their niche. If you're a tax planner, the problem you probably solve is overpaying on taxes, okay? That is the problem that you solve. And then the third piece, okay? And this is actually not one that a lot of people realize, but the last one that you need, okay, because we're talking about influence here, is you need parables. You need stories to tell. The best way by far, as you can tell, I told you a story about me being the biggest fish in a small pond, right? I'm the king of tax plan marketing. I got recognized at Disney. Well, I made that point. I didn't just tell you, oh yeah, some guy came up to me at Disney World and recognized me for my tax planning ads. That's not what I did. What I did was I told you a parable, a story about how that came to be, okay? Now, with that being said, there's one story in particular that you want, and this is called your origin story. So whatever your problem to solution story was, typically how you started offering tax planning. Like I have one client, for example. He was a tax preparer, okay? Now he does not have any, certified tax coach certifications or certified tax advisor or certified tax maverick or any of those. He's an enrolled agent, but he has a killer origin story. And his origin story is that he had a typical tax preparation business. And one year he got hit with a $250,000 tax bill. And he realized that all of the training, all of the education wasn't going to do jack when it came to lowering this bill. So what did he do? He went out and he set out on learning from the top people in the industry, going to conferences, learning from the experts or authorities, should I say. And what's crazy is that one of the very first leads that came through our ads that we're running for him. Now remember, he doesn't have as many credentials as all these other guys who have, certified value builder, blah, 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 all these lines of, total side note, I actually had a guy who came to me and was like, I have all these certifications, yet I don't know how to grow my business. And that's because, okay, remember, expertise lacks one thing. It lacks influence. Storytelling specifically is what allows you to create influence over your ideal clients. So he's going and doing all these things, and with what he learned, he was able to wipe out his tax bill. And after he did it, he went to all of his clients and started offering the exact same thing. Now this is much more powerful than saying, oh yeah, I offer tax planning. I'm a service provider. I can help you lower your taxes, okay? Because what it allows the client to do, or the prospect, is it allows them to put themselves into your shoes. And if you don't have an origin story necessarily like this, where you can go and talk about an experience you had yourself with a high tax bill, then another thing that you can do is you can talk about your clients' origin stories when they came to you after their tax bill got, so high. But it's important to have a list of these. Dan Kennedy, who's a guy that I learn a lot of marketing from, he calls it a story bank, right? You want to have a story or a parable ready for each situation or each point that you're trying to make. And that, my friends, is the 3 P's of positioning. So if you're tired of blending in as a commodity, you're tired of seen as just another service provider getting price shopped among all the other tax planners out there, then the first step is you want to pick your pond. I have a ton of videos talking about how to pick a rich niche. Highly recommend you go check them out. The second thing is that you have to identify your problem. Not the solution, okay, but you have to identify the problem. There's a guy named, I think it was either Robert Collier or Victor Schwab. And this guy was one of the most famous copywriters, right? People who write words that have influence. This guy was one of the original gangsters when it came to writing copy. And what he did is that when you can, he had a quote. He said, you want to enter the conversation going on in your prospect's mind. And I add to that when you can tell them their problem better than they can, and you can show them a light at the end of the tunnel for how to get out of that problem, they will trust you so much more. Because if you just talk about their problem, right, they inherently start to trust that you also have the solution, assuming that, of course, you're talking about their problem correctly. So I actually had, when I first got started and I was reaching out to tax planners, I sent a video to a guy who was running some ads, and I basically walked him through why his ads were not working. Now, I had not seen his results, right? I don't know how much he spent. I don't know the cost per lead, cost per booked call, cost per sale. I didn't know anything, but what I did know is that he was using an outdated strategy and he was probably facing these certain problems. Well, we hop on a call, and at the time comes to find out that he was not a good fit for us. So I tell him, I'm like, hey, probably not a great fit. And I get a text from the guy 2 days later, and he's like, dude, how can we work together? Like, I talked with my wife, she said that you're the first marketer who's not BSing me and blowing a bunch of smoke up my ass. So like, how can we work together? And I was like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll take you on. I don't normally do this, but I'll take you on. And you know, you seem like someone who wants to work hard, doesn't take no for an answer, which is great in sales, right? If you're trying to close a deal, fortune's in the follow-up. You want to be able to have some thick skin. And so when, after a few months, I was like, hey man, just out of curiosity, why did you like pursue me? And he told me, he said, you were able to describe my problem better than I could. And I trusted you because of how well you were able to articulate what I was going through and articulate the solution. Now, what did I just do there with that story? Oh, I told you a parable. So the last thing that we need here, right? Not just the problem, okay, and being able to articulate it and tell it to the prospect better than they know it themselves, but you want to be able to do it in parable format, in story format. So again, small pond, identify the problem, and you want to have a list of parables that you can use to influence your prospect to become a client. So hope this video was super helpful. My name is Daniel with Wealthy Clients. Make sure to check out the next video, and we'll see you on the next one.